Hey team, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be doing crank bearings, crank seals, the counterbalance, support bearing, and see if we can get the transmission and maybe get the cases back together. It is wicked cold here. I think it's probably about, I don't know, 20, 25 degrees inside the garage. The last video didn't have any sound because I had the heater running, but we're going to try and make it through without the heater today. I have the crank bearings and the counterbalance bearing outside because it's probably about -15 outside right now. And I have the cases heating up by the fireplace. So we'll start grabbing all those parts and pieces and getting ready to put them together. Ideally, I would throw the bearings in the freezer for a day or so, but I think it's probably colder outside than it is in my freezer. So this should actually work out pretty good, but we'll give it a shot. I'm going to be moving the camera around quite a bit as we move through some parts, getting some different views, trying to make the best of it that we can. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments, and let's get started on it. Okay guys, this is the counterbalance support. Our old one was broken, but I happen to have a spare set of cases, and I had a spare support that was still on that. So this is kind of warm. It's probably somewhere around 70, 80 degrees. And this has been outside where it's -15. Cool, I think it's pretty flush. Basically what we're looking for here, guys, is the bearing housing will get warm and expand, and the bearing itself will get cold and contract, and those things go together pretty easily. Bearing still has some good spin to it, so we'll shoot some oil down in it, and I will grab the cases and the crank bearings, and we will get those punched in. Okay team, we are going to do the clutch side crankcase bearing first. They are wicked cold right now, so hopefully they will go in really easy. Yeah, you can almost press them in. I know it sounds really loud, guys. I'm actually not hitting it all that hard. Just this table is super noisy when you hit it. We'll check the backside and make sure we're flush up against the case. It looks like we are. Those feel really nice. Cool. I will go grab the other half and we'll get those punched in. Okay, guys, we're ready to do this stator side. Same thing, went pretty easy on the stator side. I put a couple of 1-inch thick blocks so that you're not putting additional pressure on this casting for the clutch actuator. Plus it keeps it from wobbling back and forth. Gives you a little bit sturdier spot to hit on. You can press these in, guys, and I would recommend that. I do have a small hydraulic press that has like the bottle jack on top of it. And I would use that, but I don't have any heat in my shop, which is where that's at. So it's -15, -20 in the shop right now. So I'm avoiding that area. I'm going to wait to put the seals in because I think it might actually benefit us to go throw these back by the fire, let the bearings warm up a little bit, and it should be way easier to get the crank in them. The crank's sitting outside, getting cold as well, so that'll help. I will go grab that stuff. We're going to let these warm up again, and we'll start throwing the rest of it together. Okay, guys, this is going to be first attempt at putting the crank in. Stator side, if this doesn't work, then we'll either get a press to press it in, or we'll make up a tool to pull it in, but we'll do the best we can. Was a little bit afraid of that. We ran out of space with our blocks. I think that we are in. I actually needed one more block on either side just to get it up high enough, but we're in. I'm gonna go grab a couple more blocks so we can get this up and bounce so it's not wobbly, and then we will start putting the transmission back in so that we can put the other half of the case on. Stay tuned, guys. I gotta go grab some parts and pieces. Okay, guys, I grabbed a couple more blocks, so we're setting up a little bit higher. Let's get this transmission back in there. So I left both the main shaft and counter shaft still clustered together. All the washers are already in place at the base. You really need 3 thumbs to do this. There are guys who are way better at this than I am because I do it way more often, but you should be able to lay both of them in as a single unit. And we missed. So let's pull it back out and try again. Oh. Okay. I think we got it moved around just right. That we actually hit it. Cool. Let's do the shift drum next. You'll want the dimpled side sticking up because that is going to go through the other side case, and that's what your shifter is going to ride on. And now we can do shift forks. Actually, I think what we will do is drop the shift forks in and then put the pin that they ride on in separately. Okay. So I might have that backwards. I think you need to do shift forks and then drum. Otherwise, I don't think you'll have enough room to get that shift fork in there. Little gasket debris still on that one. The grooves that the shift forks ride in on the gear cluster are pretty obvious grooves. However, I might not have this drum set right. Okay, that looks correct. Okay. So I don't know if you guys could see it really well. What I had to do there was start rotating the counter shaft and main shaft until the gear clusters were positioned correctly with where the shift drum is at right now. Otherwise, your fork won't be able to find the correct groove. There's a lug on the fork and it won't be able to find the correct groove because your gears are not in the correct position. But luckily that actually went together pretty smooth. Like I say, it's not very often that I take a transmission apart on one of these. I will get our gasket out and get it lined up, and then we will grab the other side of the case and see if we can press this all back together and get it sealed up. Stay tuned. Let me go grab some more parts. I will be right back. Okay, guys, I put the gasket back on, and this has been setting back outside, so it is wicked cold again. And I also threw the case, the clutch side case, in the oven, so it is pretty warm. You're gonna see I stole my wife's oven mitts. So we're gonna set this thing back on there. Hopefully with the 2 temperature differentials, it should slide right into place, and we can start lining up some bolts to pull these cases back in. Let's give it a shot. We're just gonna lightly tap it. It would go, but it's just not going down super evenly. I actually think that might be more because of our guide pin back here on the back. Just trying to check and make sure that we're going on evenly. That still spins nice and freely. I think we're just going to give this a couple whacks right on the bearing and see if we can suck that bearing in. The bearing is on the crank now. Now we just need to get our cases sucked up. Kind of seems like maybe our issue might be here on this transmission shaft. Put my oven mitt back on so I can hold this. Oh, I see what our problem is. The shift drum slid over a little bit. Okay, there we go, guys. Sometimes just as quick and easy as that, and I wasn't paying attention. Okay, I think we are all the way down. We'll flip it up. I'll make sure this still runs really smooth, and it does. We will flip it up and start getting our case bolts in. Okay, guys, got the oven mitts out of the way and went ahead and dropped all the case bolts in it. It is kind of hard to see. It's not the best angle, but there's nothing too crazy about it. We are just going to snug them down and make sure the cases pull up good together before we move on any farther. And then we'll probably give this thing the night to cool back down. This other side of the case is still pretty hot. And we will get started on doing the rest of our seals and assembly tomorrow. So these are all 8mm. We're just going to do them in a cross pattern. Just get them snugged up, and then we can go back and torque them down later. I don't think the book really even says a specific pattern. Like typically if you're doing a head on a car or anything that has a specific torque spec, they usually have a pattern, and I could probably take a better look in the book. But for right now, we're just going to go back and forth and cross them as best we can. And this is actually coming together really nicely. You'll notice the gaskets are not green. If you ever worked with Hondas, typically OEM gasket stuff is always green. This is a set of Cometic gaskets. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, but Cometic gaskets that came with the kit. I've used them before in some other builds, a Blaster that I did and a Banshee that I did. I've never had any issues with them. I will say I try and stick with OEM stuff as much as I can. Where I lived before, we had an awesome shop in town that carried a lot of OEM and still had some new old stock stuff for these bikes. Where I live now, it's a little bit harder to come by. So mostly ordering online. I would recommend plan your builds out, especially on these older machines. Try and get all your parts handy. I know it's hard. You are going to come across stuff just like we did with that Counterbalance support that was broken. You're going to come across stuff that's broken. It happens. Parts and pieces you weren't anticipating. I happen to have, that was just the block popping, guys. I happen to have a spare set of cases that still have a lot of parts on them. I have a whole spare transmission that's in a box. I used to take an entire spare motor, top end, everything ready to go. That way if something broke, I could just throw it in. But I think I have kind of robbed a lot of parts off of that one. So that might be our next project, is getting that back together and getting a spare motor. We kind of live a ways away from the sand dunes, and for it to be worth it for us to take a trip, if something breaks, I want to make sure we have the parts to fix it, so we're not one ride out and done after a 4-hour, 5-hour drive. So that's it, guys. You can see it pulled in really nice. I have heard guys say you don't want to pull the cases together in order to seat your crank, because it can get really tight. I don't see any issues with this one. We are going to let it cool down so that everything is the same temperature. I might go throw it in the house so that it sets around 70 degrees, and we'll see, make sure everything's not bound up on it. But I don't really see any problems with it. So thanks for watching, guys. And we'll just keep tackling this thing one section at a time. And I think at the end of it, when we have the whole build done, I'll throw it together in one video and maybe condense it on time so you can see everything at once. But if you have any questions, comments, concerns, things I can do better, things I can do different, hit me up in the comments. If you like what you're seeing, subscribe to the channel. Spread the word around to your friends. We're going to keep doing old stuff like this and showing folks they can do it on a workbench at home without having a bunch of fancy stuff. So thanks guys. Tune in next time and we'll finish putting this thing together.